Last night, Caitlyn Clark did something that stopped the entire basketball world cold. With 1.2 seconds remaining on the clock, standing 31 feet from the basket, her hands reportedly clammy from missed free throws moments earlier, she caught a skip pass from Sophie Cunningham and drained a logo three-pointer over the Washington Mystics defense that will live in WNBA highlight reels for years to come. The crowd erupted. Social media exploded. Every major sports outlet ran the clip on loop for the next 12 hours. And honestly, they were right to do it. That shot was breathtaking. That shot was the kind of moment that reminds you why basketball, at its absolute peak, is unlike anything else in professional sports. But here at Simply Explained, we do not stop at breathtaking. Here at Simply Explained, we ask the next question. And the next question after that shot is not how incredible was that moment. The next question is, why did it need to happen in the first place? Why was a team with a 17-point lead against one of the worst defenses in the league standing in a position where a miracle shot was the only thing standing between them and one of the most embarrassing collapses in recent WNBA memory? And why, in the most critical possession of the entire season so far, was the play that was drawn up in that final timeout designed for someone other than Caitlyn Clark? Those questions do not have comfortable answers, but they are the only questions worth asking right now. Because what happened last night in Washington was not just a wild finish to a regular season game. It was a window. It was the clearest, most undeniable view yet into a problem that has been building inside the Indiana Fever organization for weeks. A problem that is not about personnel. A problem that is not about Caitlyn Clark's ability. A problem that lives entirely inside the coaching philosophy, the offensive system, and the fundamental vision of what this team is supposed to be. Welcome to Simply Explained. And today, we are having the conversation that everybody in women's basketball is thinking and almost nobody is saying directly. We are talking about the gap between what Caitlyn Clark is and what the Indiana Fever's current system actually allows her to be. We are going to go possession by possession, decision by decision, and philosophy by philosophy until the picture is clear enough that no honest basketball fan can look away from it. Let us get into it. Start with the facts, because the facts alone carry enough weight before we even begin making the larger argument. The Indiana Fever built a 17-point advantage against the Washington Mystics, a team sitting at 4 wins and 6 losses on the season, operating with a defense that ranked among the worst in the entire league coming into the game. A 17-point lead in that context is not just a cushion. It is a statement. It is the kind of margin that should allow a coaching staff to make calm, deliberate decisions, manage substitutions smartly, and close the game out without drama. Instead, what followed was a systematic unraveling that can only be described as a coaching and philosophical failure dressed up as a personnel problem. The Mystics outscored Indiana in the third quarter. They outscored them again in the fourth. The Fever offense, which had been efficient enough in the first half to build that substantial lead, essentially shut itself down in the second half, grinding through possessions that were slow, predictable, and almost entirely devoid of the movement and creativity that makes a modern basketball offense dangerous. There were shot clock violations. There were what appeared to be 8-second violations in the backcourt, possessions where players stood largely stationary while the clock drained, waiting for actions to develop that never came. There were sequences where Caitlyn Clark, arguably the most creative offensive player in women's basketball today, ended up standing in the corner watching a handoff between teammates unfold with minimal time remaining on the shot clock, resulting in forced, contested attempts that had no business being taken in that moment. And by the time the final minute arrived, the Fever were actually trailing by 1 point. Their franchise player had just missed 2 consecutive free throws. The lead was gone. The moment was gone, and the only thing that saved them was a play that nobody designed. This is the part of the conversation that matters most, and it is the part that has been almost entirely absent from the national coverage in the aftermath of Clark's heroics. Watch the final possession back carefully. Watch Sophie Cunningham's eyes on the inbound. She is looking for Kelsey Mitchell. That is the play. That is what Stephanie White diagrammed in the timeout. Mitchell was the intended recipient, the designed option, the player the offense was built around in that moment. Cunningham initially moves in that direction, reading the play exactly as it was drawn up. Then a Washington defender gambles. She overcommits, trying to jump a passing lane and force a steal. Cunningham sees it instantaneously, pivots her read, and fires a skip pass cross-court to Caitlyn Clark, who is standing virtually unguarded because nobody anticipated she was going to receive the ball. Clark catches, sets, and launches from 31 feet. The rest is history. But here is the thing about that history. It was an accident, not Clark's shot, which was pure basketball genius executed under extraordinary pressure. But the fact that Clark received the ball at all in that moment was the product of a defender making a mistake, a teammate going off script, and spontaneous improvisation overriding the designed play. Caitlyn Clark won the Indiana Fever that basketball game on a possession that was not intended to go through Caitlyn Clark. Sit with that for a moment. In the most important possession of the Indiana Fever's season, the coaching staff did not draw up a play for their best player. And the only reason their best player touched the ball was because Sophie Cunningham made an independent read that contradicted the designed action. That is not a small thing. That is a fundamental statement about the coaching philosophy operating inside that building right now. Because the most elementary principle in professional basketball, the principle that exists at every level from youth leagues all the way through the NBA Finals, is this. When you have the best player in the building, the play goes through the best player in the building. No exceptions. No philosophical override. No system complex enough to justify setting aside that foundational truth. You have Tom Brady, you build the offense around Tom Brady. You have Lionel Messi, every other player on the pitch exists primarily to create space and opportunity for Messi to operate. You have Caitlyn Clark, the play goes to Caitlyn Clark. That is not complicated coaching wisdom. That is basic basketball intelligence. And yet it is apparently not the operating philosophy inside the Indiana Fever program right now. To understand why this matters so deeply, you need to understand what Caitlyn Clark actually is as a basketball player, not just as a shooter, but as a complete offensive weapon. Go back and watch the 2024 highlights, not selectively but comprehensively. Watch how that version of this team played. Watch the pace. Watch Clark pushing the ball in transition off defensive rebounds before opposing defenses could even begin to set up, turning a missed shot by the other team into 2 points in under 4 seconds. Watch the ball movement, quick, purposeful, decisive. Watch Clark moving without the ball, cutting through defenders, finding space, operating in actions designed specifically to put her in positions where her creativity and shooting range could do maximum damage. Watch the no-look passes. The cross-court dimes that arrive before the defense even recognizes the read has been made. The pick-and-roll actions where Clark turns a simple ball screen into a three-point opportunity because her threat level from distance forces the coverage to collapse in ways that create openings everywhere. Watch how infectious that version of this team was, how the pace and the flow and the freedom created a product that millions of people who had never seriously watched women's basketball before fell in love with almost immediately. Now watch this current version of the Fever offense. The pace is slower. The ball movement is heavier. Transition opportunities are regularly bypassed in favor of walking the ball up and setting up in the half court. Clark spends significant stretches of possessions away from the ball, sometimes positioned in spots where she is not a serious threat within the flow of the action being run. The spontaneous creativity that made her the most entertaining player in the league to watch has been replaced with structured predictability that benefits neither Clark's natural game nor the team's overall efficiency. This is not an accident of personnel. This is not the result of opposing defenses suddenly figuring Clark out. This is a system producing exactly the results its design should be expected to produce. A slower, more half-court oriented, more predictable offense will generate slower, more predictable outcomes. And when the offensive weapon you are trying to maximize is specifically designed to operate at pace, to take advantage of defensive transitions before they are set, to read and react rather than execute and wait, placing that weapon inside a slow, structured system does not produce a slightly diminished version of what that weapon can do. It produces a fundamentally different and lesser thing entirely. The offensive philosophy is the central issue, but it does not exist in isolation. Around it are a series of specific coaching decisions that individually might be explainable but collectively paint a concerning picture. Consider the foul situation. Throughout the Mystics game, Clark was dealing with the accumulated weight of foul trouble, which is not unusual in and of itself. Every team in the WNBA right now enters their game against Indiana with a defensive strategy that includes hunting Clark on the perimeter, targeting her in screen coverage situations, and looking for opportunities to put her in foul trouble early, because disrupting her rhythm and limiting her minutes is their best chance of keeping the game competitive. Some of the fouls Clark picks up are legitimate. She acknowledges that herself and has been admirably honest about the areas of her defensive game that need continued development. But some of the fouls called against Clark in this game, and across this season more broadly, fall into a more debatable category. The kind of marginal incidental contact that gets whistled against a player who is being targeted and would not receive the same call in a different context. In this particular game, Clark picked up a foul call in the second half that was, to describe it generously, arguable. The kind of call where a coaching staff with a challenge available should look at the replay, assess the situation, and go to the mat for their player. Stephanie White had a challenge available. She did not use it. Earlier in the same game, when Kelsey Mitchell picked up a foul call, White challenged it immediately. Did not hesitate, did not deliberate, saw what she believed was a bad call and used her challenge on the spot. The challenge was successful. Mitchell's foul was overturned. One player's questionable foul was challenged. Another player's equally questionable foul was not. And then in the post-game press conference, when asked about Clark's foul situation, White went on record describing the team as undisciplined and suggesting players were getting themselves into poor defensive positions. That is a coaching choice. And that coaching choice deserves honest examination, not because it proves malice or indifference, but because consistency in how a coach advocates for her players matters enormously to team culture, to individual confidence, and to the message it sends about whose comfort and protection the coaching staff prioritizes when decisions need to be made quickly. There is a model for how to build an offense around a singular generational talent. It is not complicated. It has been executed successfully multiple times at the highest levels of multiple sports, and the Indiana Fever are currently doing almost none of it. During Barcelona's most dominant era in soccer, the club surrounded Lionel Messi with some of the most individually talented forwards the sport had ever produced. Thierry Henry, Samuel Eto'o, David Villa, players who could have been the featured option at almost any other club in the world. And their primary responsibility within Barcelona's system was not to score. Their responsibility was to create space, to pull defenders out of positions where they might otherwise crowd Messi, to occupy attention, occupy width, occupy depth, and ensure that when Messi received the ball in a threatening position, the most dangerous lanes were as open as possible and defensive help was as far away as the system could push it. Every player on that team understood that the system existed to maximize the best player. That was the stated philosophy. That was the design. And it worked spectacularly, producing the most dominant stretch of team performance in the history of the sport at that time. Now look at the Indiana Fever. You have Caitlyn Clark, one of the most complete offensive players this league has ever seen, combining shooting range, court vision, ball handling, and competitive intensity in a package that genuinely does not have a direct comparison in WNBA history. And the system around her is built not to maximize her, but to contain her within a structured framework where she is one option among several, where she sometimes functions as a spacer watching actions run by other players, and where the most important final possession of the season was designed to go through a different player entirely. That is not the Barcelona model. That is the opposite of the Barcelona model. That is building everything around the second and third options and hoping the best player figures it out on her own. And the gap between what Clark is capable of and what this system is currently allowing her to produce is the most frustrating story in basketball right now. Not because she is failing. She is not failing, but because the infrastructure around her is consistently operating below the standard that her talent demands and deserves. Let us be precise about what the actual solution looks like, because it is not complicated and it should not require extensive philosophical debate within the coaching staff. Play faster. Push in transition consistently, not occasionally. When a defensive rebound is secured, the default should be to push immediately and look for the advantage before the opposition can organize. Clark thrives in those situations. Her ability to read a developing advantage and deliver the ball to the right player at the right moment before defenders can recover is among the best in this league at any position. Design actions that keep Clark in motion, not standing in corners, not waiting for a handoff to happen elsewhere on the floor. Moving, cutting, coming off screens, operating in the flow of the offense in ways that make her a genuine threat before she even touches the ball because defenders are forced to account for where she might be going rather than simply tracking where she is standing. Build the spacing and the movement around Clark as the primary option, not as one read among several. Mitchell is an excellent player who can hurt defenses in multiple ways, and her skills are not incompatible with Clark's in theory. But in practice, within this specific system, the two players are not being deployed in ways that allow both of them to function at peak capacity simultaneously. That is a system design failure, not a personnel incompatibility, and it is fixable if the coaching staff is willing to make the philosophical commitment to fixing it. The play in the final possession should have been designed for Caitlyn Clark. The challenge in the second half should have been used for Caitlyn Clark. The offensive philosophy across all 40 minutes should be structured to put Clark in the most dangerous possible positions as frequently as possible and then let her talent determine the outcome. That is not a radical idea. That is just basketball. Last night, Caitlyn Clark hit one of the most remarkable shots any player in this league has made in recent memory. 31 feet, 1.2 seconds, hands clammy, team trailing. The weight of a blown 17-point lead pressing down on every nerve in her body. And she drained it with a smoothness and a certainty that made it look almost inevitable. That is not something you can coach. That is not something you design on a whiteboard. That is the specific, unrepeatable greatness that comes along once in a generation in any sport. The kind of ability to rise above the circumstances and deliver exactly what the moment requires regardless of what the moment has demanded in the previous 38 minutes. But here is the standard that greatness deserves in return. The standard cannot be, let's put Clark in a system that limits her to 60% of her potential for 38 minutes and hope she bails us out in the final 2. The standard has to be, let's build everything we do around maximizing what she is, freeing her to operate at the full ceiling of her ability for all 40 minutes, and see how high this team can actually go when the system matches the talent. 1.2 seconds of Caitlyn Clark at full capacity is a logo three-pointer that wins a game against Washington. 40 full minutes of Caitlyn Clark at full capacity, operating in a system designed to put her in the most dangerous positions as often as possible, surrounded by players whose primary responsibility is to create space and opportunity for her to do what she does. That is a championship conversation. That is a historic season. That is something none of us have fully seen yet, and all of us deserve to watch. The Indiana Fever have something genuinely rare. They have a player who can change not just what their team is, but what this entire league represents to the broader sports world. The attendance numbers, the national media attention, the engagement figures across every platform, all of it traces back to Clark and what she represents to fans who never watched women's basketball before and cannot stop watching now. All that is required to honor that is a system worthy of the player, a philosophy that puts the best player first, a coaching commitment to letting the talent breathe rather than containing it within a structure that serves the coach's comfort more than the team's potential. Stephanie White, the ball is in your court. The talent is there. The will is there. The player is there every single night, giving everything she has within whatever system she is placed inside. The only thing missing is the system itself, the design that matches the gift that this organization has been given. Last night ended in a win, but the way it ended should be a warning, not a celebration. Build the system, free the player, give those 40 minutes everything they deserve. That is a wrap on today's episode of Simply Explained. Smash that like button right now, drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you are not subscribed yet, fix that immediately because this is where the honest conversation lives. No filter, no sugarcoating, just real basketball analysis delivered straight every single time. Peace, I'm out.